Hello, friends and neighbors. This is DJ's Album Share, and I'm your host, DJ Roller. This week, episode 15, I'm joined by my good friend Gray Stephenson. Gray's a member of the Deli Kings, Nightcreature, Strawberry Moon, and LJ and the Sleaze. So there's tons of material you can go out and check out this guy and support these local musicians. The albums that we talked about this week were Sky Ferriera, Nighttime, My Time, and MGMT's self-titled album, MGMT. If you are listening along on Apple Podcasts, make sure you rate, review. If you're listening to us on Spotify, make sure you subscribe to keep up with weekly content. And if you're listening on YouTube, you can leave us a nice comment in the comment section. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel to keep up with new episodes. And I do appreciate all the support. Big things are happening over here. So stick around, guys. Appreciate it. This podcast is brought to you by Carolina Sea Salts. Specializing in smoked sea salts, their products can be found at Etsy. Just search Carolina Sea Salts, look for the smoked sea salts, and tell them DJ sent you. Thanks, guys. Hey, Gray, what's up? Thank you for coming on.
DJ,
I appreciate you actually coming in being a guest, man. Like, I haven't seen you in forever, dude.
I know, it's been a while.
It's good to see you, dude. This is a great excuse to get together. This is wonderful, man. So, you know, it's really cool when someone shares music with me, especially for the podcast, that I don't know. Mm-hmm. So I get to like kind of step into a world and step into it almost, especially with stuff that isn't like extremely new. It's a couple, little bit aged. You get to almost step into a time capsule, especially with this style of music. I can kind of remember where I was at in that time period and when like I wasn't familiar with Sky Ferriera, but like with MGMT, I was familiar when I remember when I first heard their stuff. So it's like I can kind of put myself in that mindset, and it's really, really cool. But I'll start off by saying the two albums that we picked this time were you picked Sky Ferriera, Nighttime, My Time, and I picked MGMT, their self-titled MGMT album. So starting with yours, the release date was in 2013. This is her debut album, and like she kind of classifies herself, which I think is a good classification for both albums, as like this indie rock synth pop, which I like, dude. I like
definitely.
I like the definition of that because it kind of makes it a little bit more like, well, you know what you're trying to listen for, you know? Exactly. When you kind of can classify it like that, but that's a very like descriptive term and stuff. Like, to go in that deep, you're like 4 genres deep. That's pretty cool. She released with Capitol Records, and it was like, in her, she did an interview where she said it's like a combination. Some of it is like a combination of like 80s synth and 90s like grunge, which I thought was really, really cool. But just my interest or what I would like to know is, what drew you to this album? How did you find this album? What was significant about it? What was influential about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, at the time, I think I was, like halfway through college and just, really like paying attention to what was like hot and coming out and like reviewed by on like Pitchfork and stuff. And just like right away, I fell in love with that record. Cause like, I'm not ashamed to say I love, some pop music. I love just a really well written, like catchy hook, and like
a lot of this stuff is super catchy.
Yeah. No, this whole album is like just hook after hook after hook after hook. It's insane. And like just how like raw it is also, and like, dirty and grungy influenced in a way. It just, it drew me in so much.
Well, I was reading a little bit about it today, and it was a weird moment where I hate it when like you read about like artists struggling with record companies making them like release stuff at different times, and that's part of where I feel like some of the grunginess of this album comes from, because there's some reports that she was going to release it earlier and then she didn't release it until 2013, and then like I get this feel where it's like, oh, that's where like some of the animosity comes from. Yeah, it's like, fuck you guys, like I've been wanting to release this. Like I hate when other people get in the way of people who want to release music. It's a good time about being alive right now, is it's getting a little bit easier for that not to have to happen, but especially in that time period, like 10, 12 years ago, like or at least 9 years ago.
8 years ago now, which is wild to think about. But
yeah, I know, eight, whatever. I can't do math right now. And the time period that you're in is just right on the cusp of all that being accessible the way it is nowadays. Is the point I was trying to say. So it's super cool, and it does make me feel, like I said, like it's a definite time capsule piece where you're like, oh man, this is so 2010. This is so 10 years ago.
Exactly.
It's great, yeah, and that was the one thing that you brought up. This album was voted at least in the top 10 by like NPR, New York Times, Rolling Stone. What was the site that you said?
Pitchfork.
That's right. That was one of the ones that it was a very well received album critically. So it was very interesting to sit down and kind of break it down and listen to it. And yeah, like the first couple of tracks were super catchy, man. But one of my personal favorites was "You're Not the Only One."
You're not the one.
You're not the one.
Yeah. That's a killer hook.
Yeah, and it's just super like synthy on all this stuff, man. And I just started playing keyboards like 4 weeks, man. But I can do stuff, and I'm just like, oh man, I can kind of appreciate this a little bit different. I love how music comes into your life at certain points, and you can appreciate it more or less or whatever. If I'd have listened to this years ago, I may not have even given it time. But now that I'm kind of sitting down and like trying to take away stuff from every album, it's super interesting when it's not a genre that you're familiar with.
Exactly.
Which is great. Is there any certain memory or experience that this album takes you to? Because I feel like especially with this, for you and I, around that time period, was pretty of a influential time. Because we're around the same age, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a weird time, right? Like anytime I listen to something that is from that era, I'm just like, oof, there's a memory, there's something there. So is there something you want to talk about with that?
For sure. I mean, for me, this record, like, it's not even so much as when it was coming out, but like how I revisit it often. Like this is a record I definitely like listen to at least like once a year, so like all the way through, often by myself, drunkenly walking home.
I love this, man. I really love this. There's certain ones for everybody. Everybody has their thing that they're like, oh, I'm just gonna put this on right now. I'm gonna feel the way that I want to feel.
Exactly. No, I mean, I was like, when I was listening to it really heavily, I was, so just like getting fucked up and like staying up until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And like that title track and like the title of the record, that like Nighttime, My Time.
Oh yeah, the last track on the album.
Yeah.
It's a wild track. It's a wild track.
So when I first was listening to it, though, I definitely had a not so legally obtained copy over the internet. I'm a better boy now.
Well, there was some weird release, the way they released that album. The way I was reading today, I was released on cassette and like it's some weird shit. And then she funded the way the vinyl was released, so that was
it was definitely like a lot of strife between her and the label at the time, and like you can tell that in the music. Like she is frustrated. And that was one of the things, like really like listening to it, like reading into this was kind of the nerd out moment I have with a lot of these albums where I'm like, I find out that one little thing, I'm like, oh, this makes the whole thing make sense. Exactly. You can see those like, pieces fall together.
Because especially with me like not being into it in the time period, I have not having a clue. Now like revisiting, you find like some little weird article where she talks shit about I think it was she had Capitol Records, Capitol Records, where it's just like they were overbearing, telling her when she was going to release stuff, then put it off. She's telling the media one thing, and then like her fans are waiting for stuff that's not coming out.
Tales all this time, especially with female artists, man.
Especially, then she's on the forefront of feminism and like on the forefront of like trying to like be outspoken in that field. At least that's what she says. So like it's a whole nother layer to that too. She feels silenced. She feels like, oh, we're just gonna put her on the back burner.
For sure. Did you see like the story with the cover art at all?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that stuff's wild. Like I
was gonna bring that up. Yeah, definitely go in. Yeah.
No, I mean they like the label wanted her to like have this very like little put together like in like a bedroom, long blonde hair, like kind of sweet looking.
It was a past picture from what I read. It was like an older picture that she had used in the past, and they were like, oh, we'd rather have you use this one. And she had already taken the one with her in the shower, her nips out, and it's like. And she was like, I don't know if I want to use this or not. But then when they pushed back on her, she's like, fuck it, we're using it.
Exactly.
Which is why I was like, oh, that's punk rock as shit, dude. I love that. Like,
and I love that picture too, because it's just so like, it's so not sexy at all.
Yeah, it's not. It's so like, you're creeper. like you feel like, I don't even.
I love it, but it's like it is such like a feminist statement in a way, because it's just so like, here I am, like, bleh.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. It's a part of the struggle that everybody kind of, to get what you need done. There's certain things you have to do to kind of get people to agree to do it sometimes, which is so weird for the music industry. Which is, it's kind of weird, dude.
Vulnerable too, which I really love, and like, just the entire course of the record, like all of those songs are so like biting in a way, and so like catchy and driving. I don't know. You can tell the emotion was very present.
So, what are some of your favorite songs off the album that kind of double down on that feeling? Like, what makes you or can you name some of the tracks that like right offhand, or is this more of a concept album for you? Like,
I mean, for me, no. It's just a collection of banger after banger.
Right.
But what I was gonna say is like, when don't worry about it. When I like first was listening to the record, I got it like off online pirating or some stuff, and so I had like the track listing like a little wrong. And I thought that the title track was the first track of the song, which I always like loved, because like, again, like going back to like, me at whatever party 4 miles away from my house, like my friends are like, I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm out of here, guys, see you later. They're like, are you sure? Like, you don't need a ride or anything? I'm already queuing up the album. I'm good.
This is a 45-minute walk, dude.
I will just like, I'm a lanky motherfucker. I'll just power walk the whole way, just kind of like dancing, like absolutely, because these songs are so infectious. Like, you have to move your body.
That was the one thing. Like, the way I've changed the way when I first started doing this, I would just kind of listen to music, and if something jumped out at me, I do research or whatever. Now I take every track and I kind of sit there with the lyrics and I read through the lyrics with them, and there's something about the lyrics and the beat and the everything that's going on that you're just like, yeah. I mean, I had the lyrics right. I was singing along with them several times. Where I was like, I'm not. What's going on with me? What's happening right now?
Well, it's just like the whole album's such like a confident statement too, that, and like it just, the title always like hits so hard for me, that Nighttime My Time, because it's like that 3-4 in the morning when everything is just totally hushed.
I mean, a lot of people don't get to experience that, and it's weird because I wish I haven't.
Sometimes there was a few nights I didn't need to experience that time of the day.
It's a weird thought process, because there's some people who are night owls who just get into that thought process. It's weird. It's hard to explain to someone who doesn't
do that.
You know what I mean? Like, it's so weird. But one of the things for this album for me, it was so trancey, which was just like, I don't know, that is almost that's almost like late 90s like techno, like to me it was like that type of thing, that I was reading a lot of stuff that wasn't referencing that. I'm like, man, am I the only one who's like, I can't be. But at the same time, when you're reading like reviews and you're reading Rolling Stones articles and they're comparing it to this, that, and the other, and like Blondie and whatever, and you're like, okay, that's cool, that's whatever. But to me, I hear like the synth stuff was very trancey.
Yeah, the 90s, the 90s influence really hits hard. Like, I do kind of like that. Like, I mean, it's a big bombastic album for sure.
Oh, it goes all over the place,
sure.
Which is so
but
cool.
There's not like, I mean, that I feel like that time in music like swells and like big kind of like growing songs were like all over the place, and this is just like very like direct, danceable, hit it like whole way through, which. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that really impressed me about her is I love, I can't sing for shit, so I love when I hear a good vocalist. She has some great vocal tracks on this.
Oh my gosh.
Where it was some of them where you can tell it was like computer, generated, and she's doing the synth thing, and then there was a couple where she like broke down a supernatural tone.
Yeah.
And you're just like, wow, like this chick can fucking belt, man. And I think she went on to like open for Miley Cyrus and do some other like pop stuff that was like really cool later. But this was really kind of the taking off point, which was really an interesting way to be introduced to an artist. it's not like you're checking in on like the 5th album that they've done. You're like, oh, this is the first kind of like full production album that you've done. And there's this like super big rift between you and the record company and all these other things that are going on, like, and the photo art and this, that. Like, it was so cool. It's like, oh, I can kind of like, it was so close to like punk rock to me, man. It was dude, this is like so rebellious. And if I'd have heard this at the time period and understand the story at the time period, I'd have been so into it.
Yeah.
But I just, you check out on stuff and you don't listen to it.
Exactly. But, I kind of can't believe that like it didn't have a bigger moment when it came out. Like, it was definitely like people were into it, especially like, kind of like
critically
into
acclaimed
music,
stuff.
like cool kids. Yeah. But like, it was not, I feel like.
Well, that was a weird time for music.
Exactly.
It was a really weird time for music. The streaming platforms are not what they were today.
Exactly.
And then like traditional buying of like albums and stuff wasn't what it is today. Even like I just went and bought a couple of vinyls the other day. Like, I'm just gotten into the, like, I'm going to have a huge collection. I don't even want to play them, dude. I just want to have them to say I'm having them. Especially, like, the folk music stuff that I grew up, because they aren't as widely distributed. So if you find one of those, it's like, holy shit, this still works. Like, this isn't scratch stuff from hell, and, like, the cover's nice and stuff.
Yeah, reissues are nice.
It's like, well, no, some of the original stuff. I found some of the original stuff at there's a new place they're opening in Churchill. It's pretty awesome.
Cool.
You should check it out.
Definitely.
But, just finding those, it's not even like a holy grail, but you kind of feel like it is. You know what I mean?
And like the digital age where everybody's catalog is just at our fingertips, it's so nice to like, I mean, because, we pay for our like subscription fees and stuff, and like our artists don't get anything. It's so nice to like, if you really like, if you like find a record that you love, which you can do now that we can just access everything, then you like go out and you pay that extra price to like, show that artist like, hey, I really fuck with you. This means something to me.
Yeah, I hate the digital pressing of vinyl now, but that's, we can't. What that's a fine idea. Fine idea.
Yeah,
man. Moving forward, is there anything else that really jumped out to you about this album that you want to talk about?
I mean, I was just listening, re-listening to it a whole bunch the past couple of days, and like.
And I think that's what's also great about this is that like it's so hard. The reason I don't pick the fucking shit initially is it's really hard. It's really hard to decide like what do you want to talk about now? What are the subjects and what are the memories and things that you want to bring forward? And that's really why I make the guests do it. But
I was definitely agonizing kind of over like what album I wanted to bring in, and
a lot of my guests do. Everybody does. Everybody's like giving me like 3-week waiting periods where they're like, I need to really think about this. It's like, dude, this isn't like this is.
Well, it sounds like such an easy thing, but then you like think about it and you're like, oh god, like wait, this album's gonna represent me as like like my kind of feeling, and like like I want to pick something like kind of like really like like cool that people will think are cool, but it's got to be something I really like. I just wanted to pick a record that like I knew. Like front to back, that I didn't have to like try and pretend like
that's
wasn't
exactly
a part
what I wanted.
Of like my heart.
That's
already.
exactly what I wanted, man. And so that's the cool thing is that I definitely am not in this genre, so I get to talk to you and get to question you and get to be like, hey, what's cool about this, so that I can go back and listen to it. That's the revisitation after this is what's the coolest part for me. Is like once I kind of get nervous before every conversation, to be honest with you, because I'm like, all right, I have kind of stuff written down and what I want to say and like how this is gonna go, but like I want to get that thing out of the guests so that I can like go back and revisit the album and listen to it, because some of this stuff I'm so musical, it gets stuck in my head, man. I just can't get away from it. And I just have to go back. I'm like, all right, it's just right there. If I dream about it, it's terrible. It's in my brain. But moving forward, man, we're going to go back to my album now. The MGMT self-titled album is their third studio album, released a couple, actually, I think it was, almost a month before the Sky Ferriera album, which is pretty cool because I like to use stuff at the same time period. So again, we get like this time capsule, like, and that's what I want to do with most of the episodes. I want to pick around the same genre and right around the same time period. So for me, this was right on. And one of the funniest things that I found, or one of the coolest things I found, the band was interviewed by Rolling Stone, and they said, they, in quotations, are not trying to make music that everyone understands the first time they hear it.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like, oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Well, definitely, because like kind of in a similar but different way, like MGMT at that time was like kind of having an identity crisis. 'Cause I know that first record, Oracular Spectacular, like kind of blew up.
The reason I know them, the reason most people know
exactly,
who they are,
exactly. It blew up in like such a big way, and then they like were kind of, playing shows with all these teenagers, like flipping out and singing their like hits out to them, and they kind of got like freaked out by it.
I mean, imposter syndrome is a motherfucker, and it happens to a lot of folks who get famous fast. You know what I mean? Where you're just like, boom, you have a hit, and especially in like this time period. Again, like this time period was such a weird time for music because it was the beginning of like a lot of social media platforms. MGMT was on a lot of early social media platforms. I think so was Sky, and like you have like stuff where people kind of got viral before viral was a thing, or like as viral becomes a thing, and then all of a sudden they have like 100,000 people in front of them. Like, what the fuck, man? Like I'm just doing a couple things here. Like it's such a weird thing because we all fantasize about being the guy who sells out the show until you start selling out a bunch of shows. And you're like, what the fuck?
What did I just get myself into?
Yeah, exactly. It's so weird to hear musicians who like run into that because it's like, isn't that what you wanted? Like, I thought that's what you're doing this for. But
but now it's overwhelming.
Yeah, exactly. We should mention the guys in the band. Andrew, I'm gonna struggle with this. Van Wingarden, and he's mostly the writer. He's mostly the guy who writes the lyrics and does the stuff. And then Ben Goldwasser, I tried, folks. He does a lot of the production stuff on it. So they produce the stuff together usually, and then Andrew writes a lot of the stuff. And the band was formed in 2001. So like they had been, by this time, like you said, they had a little bit of fame. They had been doing some stuff for 10, 12 years at that point, which for folks out there who don't play music, it's funny when people who don't understand how long it takes to establish yourself as a musical act. They're just like, oh, you can't do that in like 2 years.
It's a relationtion. I mean, you can to an extent. But.
To an extent, yeah. But it is very much. It's a long term. It's a long buy, you know.
I always say like being in a band is like somewhere weird in between dating and like coworkers, because it is like you
see each other once a week.
If
you're lucky, if you're super lucky and you can dedicate yourself to being able to do that, hopefully you see your all of your group once a week. You kind of have a personal relationship with somebody's having a shitty day. They're like, man, this sucks. I had a bad day today, but this is going to make me happy or whatever. You know, like all that kind of rides into the band.
It's an emotionally vulnerable state too, making music. You know, you're kind of like,
if you're
putting
the writer
yourself out there. If
you're the writer, like not as much as the composer, I will say from my standpoint, just being the one who like makes the music and makes shit happen. You know, it's not as... I don't feel as vulnerable as much as I know people who are writers are like, I wrote this and this means something to me and this has got to be this certain
all my
way.
Big feels.
Which is, I completely get. But as the guy who's like, I'm just trying to do this, you know, like it's so different. It's such a different dynamic that I've had to learn to deal with my entire life playing music. Some people do go into the level of learning an instrument to where they put so much into it, but it's always been fun to me. So I try to do it at that level.
Jeez,
you know,
it's a blast, dude.
I have an addictive personality. I have addictive personality, and I got addicted to music at a very young age. So I was just very lucky at that, you know. But back to the albums. Some of the songs that I actually liked on the album was a weird one, actually. I wouldn't say a weird one, but a different one that maybe you didn't think I liked. Introspection.
Oh, I was gonna say, man,
that's so cool.
That's such a good song.
So, I love the heavy bass lines that were in there.
Yeah.
And then had like the 70s vibe with like really heavy lyrics. Really heavy lyrics with like this really heavy bass line. It was just all of it together. I was like really digging that song, you know?
No, that was absolutely one that like stood out to me too, and I just like clicked in.
Yeah. It's so weird to find out like a lot of times like the guests, even though I had Allie Smith on, and like me and her went through. We went through. Like we were liking the same songs on too. It's like so strange. I just think good music is good music. You know what I mean? Like, and I think they can be. That's the point, or that's the common ground that we all kind of share. So when we hear something good, regardless of genre, we all kind of go, "Hey, that's pretty good." You know, like so. I don't know. It's a weird nerd moment I have every time I do this. And one of the other girls, this is the title of the song. One of the other titles of the song that I like was Plenty of Girls in the Sea. Yeah. And I liked it because of one line, because I am a bartender. It says, the bartender concedes from inside his vest that none of the best ones were ever the best. So keep it short, simple, and sweet, because there's plenty of girls in the sea. And I love that line. That was a cool line, man.
That is a good line.
So, like, I like to, like I said, I'm reading along the lyrics. I like to really feel the stuff. Mm-hmm. And one of my questions, obviously, is, like I said, ocular. How did you say it? Ocular spectacular?
I think it's oracular spectacular.
Oracular spectacular. I was like, damn, he said that way better than I was going to pronounce that. That was the way that I was introduced to MGMT. How were you introduced to MGMT?
Likewise, when those songs were all like hitting hard.
Yeah,
you know, they were everywhere. Kids and like Electric Feel.
And that was one of the things that I wanted to bring this album up, because I had seen the album cover. I think I had listened to a couple of tracks, but I hadn't like really sat down and like got into it the way I wanted to. And so that was part of the reason. It was the right time period, right style of music. It just worked. I wanted to really sit down and listen to it. And man, this is a weird fucking album. I like it, but it's weird is not negative in any possible connotation.
Well, but I mean, again, like that's kind of what they were going for.
That's what they were going for. So I feel like I'm hitting the nail on the head. You know, I'm just like, wow, you guys were out there, dude. So, you know, what were some of the takeaways for you? What were some of the songs that you liked, or any of that stuff, dude?
I mean, I think the hooks that really grabbed me were what also grabbed you. Introspection and like Plenty of Girls in the Sea really hit hard. But also, so the first time that like I was, you know, after you sent the album over and said we're gonna do this one, I was like kind of like, I'll just give it like a quick listen as I was like falling asleep, because it takes me forever to fall asleep. So I like got to be like on my phone and yada yada yada, like, and I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna put the whole album on, kind of like drift off here. But then I remember at one point just like, because you know, kind of like drifting off, like going out of focus, but then just like something hit and I was like, ooh.
Check back in.
And I think it was A Good Sadness.
Oh yeah, that was a thing. That's a pretty good one. Yeah. You know,
it was one of those instrumental moments where it's just like, I don't know, I love that when you're kind of tuning out and then all of a sudden something just.
And I have that happen when I'm listening to this stuff constantly, and it's so hard for me to like document it when those things happen. You know what I mean? Because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to like listen to it subconsciously, listen to it consciously with the words, but you know, both times kind of try to take notes. And man, it's so hard for me to like listen to it, and those moments go so quickly, but they impact you so much. You're like, oh, I gotta find that moment again. I gotta play the song again and find, because it's so weird. All music does that for me, right? Whether you're listening to like jazz and you're listening to someone play something where you're like, I don't understand what he's doing right there. There's usually a moment for me where I listen to it and go, oh, that's really cool. I feel enlightened almost by listening to that. And I think that comes across in all music, where you have that enlightenment moment where you kind of get whatever they were trying to do. You didn't before and you do now. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's one of the most beautiful parts about, to me, listening to different styles of music and also trying to take away stuff from different styles of music. So my biggest question for between both albums, since with the first album that you shared and the second, I know that you do kind of like indie rock type of stuff. Has either of these albums influenced you in a certain way, or has they pushed you in a certain direction that maybe, or maybe not my album, maybe more Sky's album, but maybe have they opened doors for you or done anything for you musically? Because I always loved the stuff that you've done, by the way. And you know that. But, I mean, just saying, like, it's so, for you to share this album, I was like, oh, this is cool. This is close enough to his genre that I can actually ask this question, because up till now, everybody's kind of sharing different stuff and maybe stuff that they think I like. But this was close enough to the stuff that you personally do, though I was like, man, I have to ask, like, is this something that personally influenced what you do musically?
I mean, I would say yes, probably more in like a passive way.
Right.
But, you know, I just like, whenever I've been writing or just like playing or doing anything, like I always gravitate to just really good pop. like
Yeah.
songwriting. Like, and I don't like really like play pop music. I mean, what is pop music?
Yeah.
But
What's a genre anymore, dude?
Exactly.
What's it like? Seriously, dude. I play mandolin. You want to talk about it?
Yeah. I just started playing guitar in like my buddy's project that he's doing full band now, and the drummer described it as street rock.
Okay. All right.
And I was just immediately like, fuck yeah.
Hey man, if you got
also,
something to call it, that's what matters. That's the thing that I've learned is like being being like, oh, I'm not. That doesn't get you anywhere. Being like, it's this. That's the thing that like, you're like, okay, cool. I like street rock.
Genres don't mean anything except to like clue into like maybe what you were influenced by, but also like just like evocative. It's evocative, just like lyrics, just like music in general. It's just like
up to the listener to determine what they think it is.
Like
it's all subjective. It really is all subjective, which is what has been the weirdest part about forcing myself to listen to other people's selections of music. Which I'm just like, well, they like this. Like, even like going into something if I don't like it, right? Like, I'm not a big fan of certain like pop folk bands and stuff. And people have tried to send me stuff like that. But you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, what I have to do when I go in to listen to these albums, I try to look at it and go, okay, the listener, my guest likes this. So there's something there I can take away from it. So it's changed the way that I listen to it's weird. I tried to do this because I had nothing else to do, and it's changed the way I'm playing music. Like, I listen to music and play music. Like, it truly has. And so that's one of the coolest things that I want to share about this, man.
As I get older, like, one thing that I realize more and more is that just like whatever that you think is like whack as hell, somebody else thinks is like really cool.
Usually it circles back around too.
They'll probably take something cool from it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, honestly,
I think that's the thing that's really sat with me longest. Is like, what can I take away from this?
Exactly.
Like, instead of being negative or whatever, like, let me listen to this. The hooks, like you were talking about, the hooks with her, like the writing that I'm listening to. Dude, the MGMT, the guy that writes, Andrew's weird. He has a really unique songwriting style. Well, some of it is just like one-line poetry or like two-line poetry, and the next thing is like super normal rhyming scheme. And I'm like, man, you're all over the board with the way that you write.
Absolutely.
And so some of the stuff where you can look at, you're not even expecting what you can take away from it, which is the coolest thing. Is like I'm not a huge writer. I can put some words together, but you know, like I'm not very confident in my writing. So especially when I'm reading along now with these people who are exceptionally good writers, I'm like, holy shit, like, oh, this dude is super unorthodox, and this guy's like, oh, this person does this and this. You know, it's kind of helping me. I wouldn't say develop my own style, but at least understand what other people do. You know what I mean?
Well,
and through that, I'm obviously would develop a style. I guess.
I mean, that's the best thing that anybody can do as like a growing musician is just like learn everybody and like
Sponge.
Exactly. take it all in, and then like you can see what tools you work best with and put something unique out.
You can sift through it where all the information.
Yeah.
The problem I think that people nowadays face is that, like, you know, 50 years ago people were just worried about being authentic, and now everybody today wants to still be authentic, when it's like there's tons that you can draw from that's out there that you can listen to, whether it be like Delta blues or like bluegrass or like whatever your thing is, acoustic mandolin jazz. Like,
it blows my mind how much people can like dig from now. Like,
it's so easy to like, find,
and music,
so much easier to find than it was back in the day.
Moves so fast, no matter what. Like, just like culture, like time does. It seems like it's just moving faster and faster right now. The news cycle, whatever. But like, now that like we have these huge libraries available of like all this music, like you realize, like, I mean, yeah, there were a bunch of cool bands in the 70s, but like there were, for every other band that like everybody knew about, there were like a million other bands that were like doing cool stuff. I
found out about this like really like folk. It was a band on the New York folk scene. I'm repeating myself from a past episode, but I got to tell you this. So there's this band I found out about through Leonard Cohen, who is like, their name is Kaleidoscope, and I've listened to them a couple of weeks, and they're like, the dude plays mandolin, and they're like really like psychedelic folk music from the 70s New York folk scene. It's such like niche stuff where you're like, man, like these guys were on like the cutting edge. Nobody told them they couldn't do stuff.
so many people got lost in like the sauce of it all. You
Yeah.
know? Like it just
Crazy,
like,
dude.
It was wild. I've been listening.
I
to
love that
this.
freedom though, because back
Yeah.
then it was just like, hey, make music.
Yeah,
Nowadays, a lot of people get told to be in this box or that box, and you're like, no, man, just let me make music. Just let me do. And that's one of the things about these two albums where you listen to them and you go like, these guys are just making music, especially the MGMT and a lot of the album that you shared with me, because she's like, it's a protest thing for her. Mm-hmm. So it's like, to me, I'm just like, oh man, that's so cool, because you can tell she's just like, I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I want. I'm going to play whatever the fuck I want. I'm going to sing whatever the fuck I want. The album cover is going to be whatever the fuck I want. Like, you know, the whole thing was, to me,
so
was
raw.
super raw. Yeah, exactly. I love it, dude. I love that. I love that. Part of that aspect of me made me enjoy the album much more. So I don't, you know, Allie said when she came over to do this, she was like, this is like homework. And I'm like, damn, like it kind of is, isn't it? And it's
But
fun.
it's like good homework.
Yeah, it's fun homework. And it's part of it that, like, I think as musicians in our generation, in our realm, we almost need to do. Because there's so many great artists that are lost to time. There's so many people who, I learned of a guy, I just started playing piano about 4 weeks ago.
Nice.
There's a guy, I'm a really big fan of Dr. John.
Hell
so
yeah.
like the New Orleans piano player. Huge fan.
Yeah.
So I go down this YouTube rabbit hole. I find a guy. I find a guy named Professor Longhair, which is a guy that was like his predecessor, Dr. John's predecessor from New Orleans. That just plays like boogie woogie on the piano, and that's
Professor
all
Longhair's dope.
All I want to play is like boogie woogie. That's all I give a shit about playing. I'm just like, I don't care. Dude, like that's it.
Those boogie woogie chops are untouchable,
that's
dude.
all I want to do, man. So this again is taking me down a road where like that homework is like kind of part of your. If you're not a musician who's like going out in seek of knowledge of like, especially right now, because we have the opportunity to go find whatever the fuck we want to find, and I feel like people are lazy if you're not doing it. At least from my perspective.
You gotta have that like hungry. mind.
Yeah, it's crazy, especially because of the cool stuff that you can find, the people that the albums that you can listen to. You know, one of my biggest influences is George Benson. Happy birthday, George Benson! His birthday's today. But that guy I found through going through a rabbit hole like that, and that's one of the coolest things I think that I encourage people to do, and I wish that more people did. But you know. That's my little soapbox. I'll shut up. One last thing. Is there anything else you would like to talk about these albums before we get off of air? I do appreciate you coming on, brother. But
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. If anything, I'll just say, like, I was re-listening to the Sky album and the vocal on Heavy Metal Heart.
oh yeah, that's a great one. I think that was the one I was talking about, where it's like her vocals are so good, it's crisp, crisp, dude. Like
there was just one moment where you can like feel it, like she like breaks up just a little bit, and you're like, ooh, and that was a moment that really took a re-listen where I was like, ooh, yeah.
I love those like
I didn't realize
supernatural
that.
vocalists as well. You know what I mean? Where you listen to them, you're like, ah, man, that's real. That's real shit.
Undeniable.
Hell yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you.
I'm gonna wrap this thing up, but you're gonna be on again, so don't go nowhere.
Don't doubt it.
Oh yeah, brother.